Hi, I'm Kathleen Bostic, and welcome to our session, Up Close and Personal, a conversation about women leaders. I'm delighted to have you here today at Loc World. Even though it's virtual, we're going to try to give you the same feel as it would be if we were all in person. So we're going to start out with our women leaders talking about themselves and some of their background information, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. And with me today, I've got Paulette Hedo, who's VP of Enterprise Product Delivery and Marketing Tech at Virgin Voyages. Sylvia Avery, head of Loc at Juniper Networks, but also co-founder of Women in Loc. And Veronique Ascaya, who's the CEO of Argos Multilingual. And I'm Kathleen Bostic. I'm a localization consultant with Argos Multilingual. So I thought I'd first start out by talking a little bit, giving you a little bit of background on me. I've been in the localization industry now for 25 years. I started out as the first employee of SDL in North America and grew North America over the next 9 years. And then I moved to Lionbridge and spent various roles, VP roles there at Lionbridge. And then I came back in 2014 to SDL to pretty much transform it to what it is today. And we took the revenue from North America from 60 million to over 100 million in the 7 years that I was with SDL. And I recently joined Argos as a localization consultant and strategist. But many of you know me for my years in the localization industry, and what you don't know is my backstory. And so before I came into localization, I was actually a stay-at-home mom with two little ones. And I knew I wanted to get back into the corporate world. So I went back to school and got my MBA. And after I graduated, I wanted to get back into the workforce, and I ended up getting a minor in information technology. My first job was a corporate management trainee programming SAS and COBOL. And I realized after 6 months of that I did not want to be a programmer. So I moved into marketing and spent a couple years with Burlington Northern, picked up my family, moved them across the country to California, and spent 3 years at Southern Pacific Railroad. Talk about a male-dominated industry, moving up the chain there in the metals and ores business unit, transferred my family to Denver 3 years later, and spent 5 years working my way up the ladder there to finally being managing director of the metals and ores business unit at Southern Pacific. And in 1995, we landed the largest deal in the history of any railroad, and we called it the Great Iron Ore Heist. And my claim to fame is this Trains magazine issue where I had my picture. And so 2 months later, I looked around and said, you know what? I've hit the glass ceiling. There's no place to go here, and it's time to move industries. So I answered an ad in the paper, and lo and behold, I ended up at a small company in Boulder called AL10. Some of you may be familiar with them, and that's really how I got my start in localization. And my lesson learned through my career is that if you've hit a glass ceiling, if you're not happy, it really all comes down to you, and you have the ability to change your circumstances and do something about it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first panelist, Sylvia Avery, and let her give you some information about her background, the challenges and the obstacles she's overcome to create her success at Juniper. Sylvia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia Avery. And let me tell you a little bit about my story. I like how you started, Kathleen, going back. And I want to do the same thing. So since I was little, I always knew what I want to do. And no, it wasn't localization. I wanted to be a vet. And so I went to veterinary school. And in my second year, I started getting that feeling that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't in the right path, in the right career. But when you dream of something for so long, sometimes you become blind to the signs that are put right in front of you. So I kept going and I graduated. This is me graduating as a vet. And my first job was in a clinic, and I stayed there for about 6 months. And I realized it wasn't really my calling. And I knew it was time to move on. So I got a job at a pet food company. And let me tell you, that job was a lot of fun. I had to talk to other physicians about the nutrition benefits of the pet food. I traveled all over Brazil, and I was in the marketing department. And that's when I had the first insights of with marketing and what it was. And I became very interested. I was very ambitious at the time, and I knew that without English, my career there or anywhere in that area would not go far. So I made a plan. And my plan was that I would come to America, learn English in 6 months. And if I did get enough points in the TOEFL score, I would study in UC Berkeley and do a marketing extension program. And so I came, and before this is the first lesson is be bold. You know, sometimes in life you have to have big plans and you have to be bold. I was quitting my job, I was leaving my family and friends behind, and I was leaving also a 7-year long standing relationship to do this, to do that plan that I commit to do. And you know, it made all the difference in my life to do that. It changed everything. So this is me coming. This is the school I study English as a second language. And after that, I did go to UC Berkeley to study marketing. And you would think, oh, okay, now it's time to go back. But it was right in the hype of the dot-com boom. And I was living in San Francisco, and there was so many opportunities. It was such a fun place to be that I decided to stay. I got different jobs at startups, and I did started doing some editing. In one of the jobs, I became a localization coordinator, and that's how I started in localization. And one thing led to another. I ended up also getting a master's degree, Kathleen. I did my MBA, and I ended up meeting my husband, and we, you know, got married. And here I am, you know, the 6 months. It's now over, you know, 20 years that I've been here. So I think my next lesson is don't be afraid of reinventing yourself. It's okay. I mean, we're so young when we choose what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. And we don't always get it right. So it's okay to start over. And sometimes it will lead to better things. Uh, you know, will make you happier in your career. It's so important to like what you do, to really love. So start over if it's not right for you. And you know, over the years, I went to work in different companies. I got in high tech. I met some amazing people. And when I was at VeriSign, I met Anna Schlegel and Eva Claudinova. They're both my co-founders at Women in Localization. And we decided that we wanted to start an organization where women could meet and talk about tools and processes and other things. And that's when we decided to start what was known then the Northern California Women in Localization. And that was back in 2008. We actually started with 5 founders. When we had our first meeting, we decided on the name and our mission. But pretty soon, the 2 other founders decided to leave, and only Eva, Anna, and I stayed. So after 2 years that we had started Women in Localization, for those that don't know Women in Localization, our mission is to advance women careers and the localization industry. And this was the first name. This in 2010, that's when we went global. At first, we only had women here in Northern California because we're so, we want to meet face to face. We want to have a place that we could meet in person. But it soon showed that other women want to meet beyond Northern California, and there was this need that we decided to open up and make it global. And we became Women in Localization. That was our logo back then. And around 2016, we went into a rebrand, and this is the logo that most people know now. And this is Anna, Eva, and I, the three founders of Women in Localization. And I think my final lesson is give back. I had so many opportunities to grow and meet amazing people throughout my whole career. And I think giving back is so important. I love what we do at Women in Localization now. We have a mentoring program, we have webinars, thought leadership pieces, articles that we prove, and also all the networking that we do. And anyone can give back, even in the beginning of your career. If you're a student, you get a job, well, you can help other students. How did you get that job? You can lead the way. If you are in mid-management, you can be helping people that are beginning their career. How did you grow to get to mid-management? You don't need to be a senior person in your industry to give back. So that is my last lesson that I want to pass it on.
So Sylvia, did you have a mentor along the way, or did that even exist back then?
I always had mentors, Kathleen. I always had mentors throughout my life. And I also had coaches, mentor and coaches. I think it is so important to talk to other people in the industry and to have that guidance for you to grow. I highly recommend, and there are so many people out there that want to help, that want to advise. So don't be afraid. Invite someone for a coffee. You will be surprised how many people will say yes to that. It
right,
is,
to just want to help.
be bold. Remember that. Be bold.
I like that.
Invite someone for a coffee.
All right, that's great. Thanks for that background information.
I will.
All right, thanks, Sylvia. We appreciate your presentation. And now we're going to turn it over to Paulette, who's at Virgin Voyages, and let her give us a bit of information about her background story. So Paulette?
Hello, everyone. My name is Paulette, and I am currently with Virgin Voyages, and it is the latest Richard Branson brainchild for a new industry, and so quite excited about that. I am going to share with you my career journey, and the first thing I'm going to share with you is that I never graduated from college. I do not have a degree, and I'll tell you why that's important throughout my journey. I went 2 years to LSU, greatest 2 years of my life, and I had really financial difficulties. I am the first generation US born in my family. My mother and father both are immigrants. They met here in the US. They came when they were early. And so for those of you that are not immigrants, at the economic level that they came to this country, it's just about survival. It's about making ends meet and raising your family. So education, even though it was important in my family, and I had hoped that I would be one of the first to graduate, it wasn't the case for me. When I started assessing, I did not see the reason to get into that type of debt, because at the time I was just doing general studies. I knew I wanted to go into travel. So like Sylvia, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I wanted to travel the world and learn different cultures, but didn't know how I could make a living doing that. And so I dropped out of college and immediately went to work. You can switch slides now. So the one thing I just realized as I was prepping for this presentation was that I suffered from imposter syndrome. I held myself back because in my head I had put, I can't be as good as these folks around me that do have degrees. And so really it was a colleague of mine that I was going through my presentation with, practicing, kind of getting her feedback, was when she said, "Oh my God, you had imposter syndrome." I had not heard of that. I don't know if any of you out there have, but this was the first time that I had heard of it, and of course started researching and looking at it. And yes, I had many of the symptoms of it. Luckily, I had the aha moment for me at Virgin, which I'll talk about a little bit when I go through my career path. Kathleen, next slide. So knowing that I wanted to travel, I became a travel agent. I figured that would be the way for me to be able to get out there, see the world, and be able to enjoy what the world had to offer out there. I quickly got an opportunity. I came to Miami for a training class, and I said, I'm moving to Miami in a year. Didn't know how, didn't know when, didn't know any of that, of how it was gonna happen, but I knew I wanted it to happen. So fortunately for me, the agency I was working for wanted to open up an agency in Miami. And that's how I moved from New Orleans to Miami. At 21, no family, no friends, just up and came out here and started on my career path. I did have to work 2 jobs in order to be able to support myself, but that was just part of what I knew I needed to do. Within that, I actually got saw an ad for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. They were actually starting bringing in-house their air ticketing and documentation. And this was at a time, this was in '88, back in the time where you were still handwriting airline tickets. There was no automation at that time for any of these things. And this is where I start what I call building my toolbox, my skill toolbox. I was eager to learn. And I will say that throughout my entire career, I have never stopped learning. I have to be challenged and then move on to the next thing. So it's very important for you to understand, keep your skills relevant. And as we know, things change constantly. And so making sure that you're relevant is important, I think, in any industry. From there, at Royal also is where I start learning about leadership and I had 50 direct reports because it was an operation area. And so I learned really quickly about people, personalities, how important it was to assist them in getting where they wanted to get to in order to help you be successful as well. And so that for me was where I actually started really understanding that I enjoyed mentoring and coaching at that point. As the team I was working with at Royal Caribbean was from Amadeus, and so they recruited me. They wanted me to move into their cruise line and specialty sales team. And so this is where I moved in. What the technology and what we had developed at Royal Caribbean, they wanted to be able to obviously sell to other cruise lines. And so I moved to Amadeus, and this is where I started learning about technology. I was in the sales department as their business analyst and as their subject matter expert for cruise line. And then I worked with IT in order to be able to develop all of the other things that we needed to do. We automated air ticketing. We automated the documentation of what we needed to send cruise line guests, et cetera. It's where I actually started learning how to be in sales, how to start presenting out to customers. And so that's where I honed in on those skills. From there, I actually got recruited into the Disney Cruise Line startup. So the folks I had worked with at Royal Caribbean recruited me. We called it the Royal Caribbean of the North. Moved to Orlando once again. And I have here new beginnings because I was a new mother. I packed up my 6-month-old. My husband at the time was in medical school abroad. And I was now again moving to a new city with no support system, my husband abroad, and starting in a startup. I will say that is where I've gotten the most learnings. It's where I learned how to balance. It's where I learned what my priorities were. With an infant, you can imagine. It's where Disney has an amazing leadership program, and they call it Disney University. And they put their leaders through every year that you are with them. It's learning and you continue to build on. And this is where I learned that what we call them guests at Disney, but your customers, your clients are really important. It's where I actually started learning where a customer experience came from, because they were so guest centric. And it was amazing. Even the leadership programs that I went through was my college education. It really talked about everything from presentation. They really formed me. One of my greatest challenges there was that Walt Disney World was very corporate. We were very formal. If you wore dresses or skirts, you had to wear pantyhose. Our earrings couldn't be more than, larger than a quarter. They were very stringent in what your appearance was. And because we were considered on stage, meaning we were parks and recreation, they were very stringent about how they wanted you to appear to their guests. And so I learned how to navigate that world. It was very much a male hierarchy world. And as a Hispanic female, had to learn how to navigate and deal with that. And so that taught me what I needed to do in order to be able to become successful at Disney. At this time, my husband graduated from medical school, had gotten residency in Miami. So of course, we had always agreed that his career would come first. And so I ended up having to move back to Miami. It just so happened that, again, some of the leaders that I had worked for at Royal said, hey, would you be interested in coming back? And I said, certainly. One of the important things of going back to Royal, and this is where choices are very important. I was at a senior manager. I had made it to senior manager at Disney Cruise Line. I had to go back to being an analyst for the position that they had available at Royal. And at the time, I thought I was taking a back step in my career in order to be able, to do what I needed to do. Again, priorities. My family was my priority. My husband's career at that time was my priority. And so we moved back. This is like I was spent 10 years here, but this is where it actually was not a back step. This was actually a stepping stone to everything else I was going to be able to do and the opportunities I was going to be able to have. I decided to do it because I knew that within time I would move up again. That was very clear in my mind. And what that gave me the opportunity to do was to get into globalization. It gave me the opportunity to learn e-commerce. And it is where I met Kathleen. So when that happened, Royal had not been international yet. And a year prior to them actually starting, there was a town hall and they said, we are going to be building out our international offices. And I was sitting there with my team in this town hall and I said, that's where I'm going to be in a year. That is where I want to go. And luckily there was an internal posting. I had about 40% of the skills and experience that they were looking for that job, but I didn't let that stop me. I knew that I had value and skills. I knew that I was a fast learner because everything I've had to do in my life, as we all do, we're not born knowing all of this, having to learn. And so I applied. It was the most rigorous interview process, even though it was internal, I've ever been through, even my interviewing process with Virgin. But anyhow, that is where I got the role, and it was expanding out all of our websites in 14 languages. And that's where then we learned what we needed to put a global platform together for our website. And this is where I receive and get this experience. I was very happy. I was traveling the world, learning, albeit for work, but I managed to be able to take time. And then this is where I'm now realizing that dream that I wanted to learn about different businesses and different cultures. At that point, then I then get recruited for Virgin, again, another startup. There are days when I said, what was I thinking? Why did I think I was going to be able to do this 20 years later? Because there are those days. But it's been amazing. And what I learned is that everything I've been through, all of the things that I had to learn, that I put myself through, what Sylvia says, be bold. You have to be bold. You have to be willing to take risks. You have to assess it at every step of your journey. And I'm glad I did. This is where I've actually progressed the most in my career, from a getting into an executive position, and then moving in now, just recently, I was just promoted to VP, taking on a whole new department. And so all of the things in my career have prepared me for this. And this is why I say preparation meets opportunity. For those of you, Oprah always says, there is no such thing as luck. There is thing about it. Luck happens when you're preparation and opportunity, right? And this is important as well, because I got recruited again. So after my applying for Royal Caribbean, I've never had to apply for another job again. I've always been recruited in. And this is important when I get into the next slide. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt. It says, remember that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Only you can make yourself feel less than or what have you. And that was a challenge for me. I finally understood that I was holding myself back. That when I was seated at a table, that I typically didn't give an opinion because I'm like, oh, let the smarter people in the room do it. And again, it was my mentality tied to I didn't have a degree. I have a degree. I have a degree of hard knocks and just experience and learning the way. What I learned here is that a lot of my ability to flex and move is that I wasn't put in a box. No one, I didn't allow myself to be put in a box because I didn't know how. I didn't have any of the other teachings or learnings or beliefs. And so I didn't have that. So there was really nothing that I felt was attainable. I just had to figure out how to do it. I also knew that I had to work harder and be smarter and understand how to navigate those things. And so it did take me a while, but I finally got there. I think I finally come to my own. I think it just has to do with also maturity and the things that you're taught in life. And so I am glad that I broke that thinking for me. And now at Virgin, I mean, I'm working with some of the top educated. I mean, we have people from Wharton School of Business. We have people from Harvard. We have, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I truly believe in education. I think that you need to get out there and get as much of it as you can. I was able to take courses and learn other things and get certified in other things. And where I thought I needed skills is where I would go and take classes. Now it's even easier with YouTube. Everything, there's so many free things out there. So go ahead and teach yourself, because it is important within moving within your career. Next slide. These are just some of the tips that I learned. Attitude matters. How you approach it. You make that decision every single day. All of us have obstacles in our lives, whether it be personal or career. We all have difficulties. How you decide, whether you decide to take that into your workday, leave it at home. You have to find a way to be able to do that. One of the pillars at Virgin, it says we will hire for attitude and teach skills. So skills isn't the most important thing for us. Is if we see someone, it's about that willingness to take risks, the willingness to be bold, being open to learning. Build authentic relationships. And I say authentic because there are, obviously, we have acquaintances and we have people that we meet throughout our careers that we stay in touch with. Relationships and networking matters. It really does. As I mentioned, in my career, I only had to apply for one job. Everything else I've been recruited for, someone has, given me a call. Hey, how about this? What would you think about this opportunity, et cetera? So make sure you keep them throughout your journey. I wouldn't be speaking to you today if it wasn't for Kathleen. Kathleen was the one that actually introduced me to speaking at conferences. She saw something in me at that time that I did not see in myself. And I kept saying, what can I teach anyone? Doesn't everyone know about globalization? My first speaking was at a Loc World, and it was sharing what we did for globalization at Roll Caribbean for the website. And that was when, after I finished that, I was like, oh, people are going to know this. And I was shocked at the amount of people that were still learning it in the midst of. And so sharing that information is equally as important. Leadership support. I always tell everybody, if your leader doesn't think you're the best thing since sliced bread, find another leader. Because it is important that they support you, that they advocate for you. You're not going to move anywhere in your career if you don't have that. And pay it forward. Support those that are part of your team, outside of your team. Help give people a hand. Help them get to where they want in their careers, because I will tell you, it comes back threefold. Their success is your success. And the last one I'm gonna leave you with is, you deserve a seat at that table. You have a voice, use it. I wish I would have learned that earlier in my career. But know that what you have to say is important, that it has value, and that, again, others will hear it. If you make a mistake, so what? If you learn from it, that's the most important thing, because we're all human and none of us are perfect. One of the models that I've started using lately is it's about progress, not perfection. And so that is what's driving me now through this startup and everything else that we're doing as well. And then my last slide, I think it's my last slide, is a quote that I learned from Vince Lombardi early in my career. And it is true. Unless you want to be bold and take risks and determine that you need to learn things, even after you've mastered it, you'll stop growing. And then this is the one that I always absolutely love is, every job is a self-portrait of a person who did it. Autograph it with excellence. Whether people are watching, whether you're going to get credit for it or not, it's a fantastic habit to do it. When I wash dishes, it's the same for me. And I think that has been part of why I have been able to navigate and move in and actually have people see that. Thank you.
Wow, Paulette, I learned so much.
Amazing.
and I thought I knew you. Yeah, that was really inspirational. Thanks so much. I really appreciate all your insight. I love some of your the observations, and I think the number one for me is leadership support. And I think that, if you're a leader, I totally agree with you. And that is how you feel. I see this with my daughter and her job, and she has got the best boss, and who's constantly giving her feedback, praising her. It's not about the money. It's all about feeling, important and worthwhile, and it's a real energizer. So thanks so much for sharing that. I'm looking forward to the Q&A after.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, we're going to go on to Veronique. Veronique and I go way back. We've known each other since our days at Lionbridge in 2004. And she ran Ireland, UK, and I ran Enterprise, and we got to know each other as leaders there. And it's been fun watching her career take off. And, most of the CEOs in the localization industry are men, number one. And secondly, if they are female, they were the founder or the co-founder, and they are the CEO of the company. So Veronique's unusual in the fact that this is her second role as CEO, first at Explanation, and then now at Argos, and she wasn't the founder of either one of these. So I think it's a big jump for women in the language space. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to you, Veronique, to take over.
Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you, Sylvia and Paulette. I think you've covered all the lessons, so this is going to be short, right? So going back, I thought actually, also when I was listening to you, Sylvia, about, what you wanted to study. And I thought back, I wanted to be a pharmacist when I was a kid. And I realized in my teenage years that this was going to be boring because I would be behind a counter. People would be coming to me, but I would be going nowhere. And I really had that travel bug. And I was born in a kind of relatively small city in northern France. And every one of my friends, family say, oh yeah, go and study, you know, I don't know, 60 miles away from where we are and have a job locally, etc. And to me, that was horror. That was the opposite of what I wanted. So I went and I studied 600 miles away from home in a city I'd never obviously been to. And I studied applied languages and international administration with a goal to work at the UN or to work in an embassy or to work in Brussels, but anywhere but my hometown, right? And I thought this is a good channel. So let's go to the first slide. So my first job actually ended up to be, well, maybe we'll go to the one, yeah. My first job was actually in the French embassy in Dublin. I did Erasmus in Ireland and I applied and I got this job. And I thought this is my dream first step, right? It kind of ticks the boxes. I'm using my languages, I'm using my diplomatic studies, and I hated it. And I hated it because I realized it was a wrong fit. It was very conservative. It's still, I think, to this day, is a very conservative environment, very, let's say, male dominated. And I experienced discrimination for being a young lady in that environment. It was quite an interesting, eye-opening experience. But mostly this conservatism, I thought, what do I need to go ahead? How do I become an ambassador? And I realized that what it would take, I just didn't want to go that path. Plus, there's also this element that you have to come from given families, typically. That's what you see a lot of ambassadors, consul, basically they're from a family that's been in diplomatic corps. So I did the first Be Bold, I left without a job. And I applied to be a translator. I was not a translator by trade. And I got lucky. I did a test. It was a test on hardware. I'll always remember that test. I asked a friend, again, the lesson on asking for help. I said, you need to teach me about IT over the weekend. And he said to me, what are you talking about? I said, yes, I need to do this test. And I had, at the time, a dictionary on hardware and motherboards and all sorts of things, right? I handed in the test. And the manager who hired me became my mentor and one of my best friends. And she said, your test is really good from spelling, grammar, but you have no clue about IT. I will teach you. And this lady, she actually came to work 2 hours early every single day to teach me the ropes. And that was, one of the best gifts I could have been given because it gave me a way into an organization. So asking for help and having somebody who looks out for you, big help there at the time. After 3 months, all the linguists got fired in that company. First M&A, and we got fired. And my mentor at the time, I remember I was upset. I had been in the job 3 months. She said, don't be upset. Do something about it. Don't let the emotion overwhelm you. So what we did, all of the linguists in that company, we met up that night. It was a Friday. And we were asked to stay for 3 months to complete the projects we were working on. And we said, you know what? That's not what we're going to do. Every single of the 20 linguists that gave their resignation on the Monday morning and say, you want to keep us to finish the projects? Then we joined by a freelance and here's our tariff. That's going to be double what you're paying today. And this boldness, because we were also all doing it, we had that power to actually make things change. And for me, that was a big lesson, which I kind of somehow forgot later in my career, but I'll come back to that. Maybe we go to the next slide. So in the localization business, so after this being fired and coming back episode, it was really a time of growth. And interestingly enough, I never asked for a seat at the table. I never said, oh, I want this job. I was blessed with great managers, great leaders who actually looked out for me. And they saw I was working like crazy and I was very engaged and dedicated. And they said, oh, there's this job, you should do this. And they actually helped me. And then it kind of came a bit to a stop. And the stop was actually in line with a big M&A that happened in 2005, if I recall. And then in Europe, where I was based, the culture of the company changed drastically. And that also coincided with me becoming a mother. And that's why I saw, hold on a second here, I'm hitting a bit of a glass ceiling, if you wish, or I'm hitting a bit of a bump in the road. So if we go to the next slide, that kind of illustrates that a little bit. I thought it's going to be really harder for me to climb compared to what I'm seeing in this organization, because I was being comments about me becoming a mother to the fact that I would probably not work as hard. And that was, this kind of bias really surprised me. And I just thought back to that time where my mentor said, don't be upset, because I was getting quite upset with, there was really also discrimination. I was working in a team solely with men. And they would meet on a Friday night and have beers in the pub, and I would not be invited. All of these things happening. And I thought, hold on a second, I can keep on being upset, or I can do something about it. And I decided to change company, got another opportunity. And there everything went well until I applied for the CEO job. And again, like that was the one time I actually asked for it. And during the process, I was told, oh, but aren't you pregnant? Are you not going to pull out of the race? And that really made me realize that there is a certain way of thinking based on your appearance, where you come from, you know, what stage of your life you're in. And I decided that, again, I have to do something about it. And what I did there is that I said, why didn't I get the job? And then you can choose what you want to do, but actually asking why, then you see if the answer you get is one that you can take and say, fair enough. Or if it's something that you say, no, I really don't think this is valid. And then you decide to do something else. And this is what I did. I moved on. And each time, maybe to mention that, packed the family, changed countries a good few times. We're talking about support. I think that also if you're blessed with support at home, that's a big thing. I felt that having, support from my spouse, who actually helped me not being able to even run into imposter syndrome, because he kind of didn't give me that opportunity to whine or to be, sorry for myself or think I'm not capable. He would say, come on, just get on with it. And having that support at home also made a huge difference, because it was like a mentor at home, if you wish, kind of saying, yeah, you can do it. And also kind of giving a different perspective to things that make you think a little bit differently. And then without asking, I became CEO in a company, and I realized that's what I want to do. And the lesson I learned there is that, yes, there's a certain meritocracy, but you have to also show people that you're capable of leadership. What I realized when I was told no, my manager or my leader didn't look out for me. So what you were mentioning, Paulette, was very, very real, because my manager would apply for the same job. So why would he or she want me to be successful if they're in competition with you? And it took me a while to kind of really understand that. And this kind of phase of growth with the elevator and the stairs was really a phase of emotion and getting over the emotion, understanding why I felt it. It's unfair. Maybe things look unfair to me, doesn't mean it's unfair to somebody else. So that was also a way of growing from myself. And that's for me would be a big lesson, is that before looking at everybody else, try to understand yourself, how you work, what are the mechanics, what are the things that, be in touch with those emotions and understand why they're coming. And that was a really invaluable lesson, because it kind of helped me see the woods for the trees in several occasions. And now today, I would go to the last slide. It's a different one where I give back. And one thing that I always say is that surround yourself with the right people, with the right talent. I remember that when I was first appointed to CEO job, I went to Dublin to see a fellow CEO. And we spent the afternoon drinking coffee and back to this kind of learning and asking and having people who look out for you. He said to me, Veronique, I will give you one piece of advice: talent. And I said, what do you mean? He said, surround yourself with the right talent, you will be able to achieve anything. And the fact that he gave me this one tip, not 15, was also very valuable, because it kind of helped me focus and look back. Because when you learn something, it's kind of a haha moment, and you look at the future, but you also look at the past, or maybe how you could have had this piece of information or advice before, and it would have avoided a lot of mistakes, right? But this was really important, because I thought, yes, you want to have the best technology, hire the best technology people. You want to grow your company, hire the best salespeople. And that was a really important piece of information. And I also wanted, and today in this stage of my career, it's what Sylvia was saying, it's the give back moment. because I'm like, yeah, I still want to achieve loads of things, and I'm learning every day, and I have this passion. And I also think, but who are the next leaders? Who can I help? And I've always kind of done it in an informal way to start off, this mentoring, and then kind of made it a little bit more formal. So meaning that I would spot somebody and say, okay, maybe I can help this person. And it would start with a coffee talk. And then it would be like, yeah, let's go outside and walk around town and have a chat about things. To the point where they come and say, you know what? I'd like to have a discussion about this or that. And then we would formalize it. And one thing that struck me with women and leaders is this confidence aspect, you know, how to be confident, that I saw that was something really a recurrent challenge. This like, can I do it? Will I sound stupid when I make this presentation? And I felt that doing very practical things were helpful. So doing dry runs before a meeting, or kind of asking questions. So I remember I had this lovely lady who she had this issue with confidence, and she told me, and I used the so what technique. She said, oh, no, this happened. I said, so what? And we'll go further and further like this. And it became like kind of a relationship where I supported her the best I could. And when I saw how successful she became, it made me so happy. I thought, you know what? It's only a few hours in the month. Do it. And I think that it will come back to you 100-fold. So if I look back, you know, a lot of the lessons, Paulette and Sylvia and Kathleen, you've mentioned them about being bold, asking for a seat at the table. I think one, for me, the talent, surround yourself with the right people, big lesson. And the second one also is kind of managing expectations, right? To kind of being very clear to people to what you expect. Because if you have the right talent, it makes your life easier, right? You can delegate, you can empower people. That, to me, has been a huge time saver, not doing it myself. And I guess the last thing that I always believe in is like, if you do the right things, the right results will come. You know, believe in yourself, and you know what these right things are, and then you will be amazed at what you can accomplish. That's it.
Totally agree. And, you know, one thing that I picked up on was, which I have to say I haven't given as much credit to, was the spouse support or family support. And I think all of us know that without our families and spouse, significant other, whatever you want to say, if you're a working mom, you cannot make it. I mean, you've got to have somebody there that is supporting you so that you can go travel, you can go do new things, you can go to conferences or whatever you need to do. And that really contributes to your success. Absolutely. So thank you. Oh, Sylvia, we're seeing you twice now. But I think that was a great session, and we are now at the end of the presentation. So we'll be then moving into a Q&A period. But I think this is a good way to end the speaking session, when the leaders can inspire a group of people to perform beyond their normal limitation. Great things always happen. And I think we're all inspirational leaders. That's what I pride myself in being, and I think all of you are too. So thanks, everyone. And now we'll move to a live Q&A.
Thank you.